Good evening. My name is Adrian Dubos. I am the outgoing ACS Student Chapter President at Southern University Law Center. It is my honor tonight to present the 2024 American Constitution Society Progressive Champion Award to Black Voters Matter. The Progressive Champion Award recognizes people and organizations whose work is dedicated to ensuring that the law is a force to improve the lives of all people. And there is no better example of that than Black Voters Matter, with its commitment to strengthening our democracy by uplifting and empowering Black and marginalized communities, those communities most likely to be denied their right to vote and shut out of the political process. Founded by Latasha Brown and Cliff Albright in 2016, Black Voters Matter, focusing on building power in marginalized, predominantly Black communities across the country. In addition to voter registration and get out and the vote efforts, Black Voters Matter focuses on issue-based campaigns, voter education, and policy advocacy, including expanding early voting, resisting voter ID laws, and upholding and ensuring voting rights. Black Voters Matters also works to build capacity for over 600 community-based partners through training and financial support. Through organizing and direct action and litigation, Black Voters Matter strengthens our democracy by pursuing stronger voting rights policies at the state and federal level, increasing representation of Black and marginalized communities, and addressing systematic issues such as negative interactions with police officers, burdensome criminal legal fees and fines, and driver license suspension, so members of Black and marginalized communities can engage in the political process. Black Voters Matters has also been a great partner for ACS and our chapters, connecting with our chapters for programming and volunteer opportunities over the years. And this year, you can find them here at the American Constitution Society National Convention. They have a table on the 6th floor near the registration desk. I encourage you to stop by, fill out a postcard, and find out more about this incredible organization. This past Good Friday, I had a pleasure of hosting an event with Black Voters Matter on Zoom. Now, my university had their spring break around that time, but there were still students that decided to participate to learn about Black Voters Matter and their event and participate with registering to vote. Besides being a Black man in Louisiana who has seen and learned about the history of voter regression, I am happy and inspired to see the influence that Black Voters Matters has done throughout the nation. And so, in recognition of its extraordinary efforts to ensure that the law is a force to improve the lives of all people, I am pleased to present the 2024 American Constitution Society Progressive Champion Award to Black Voters Matter, and welcome to the stage Cliff Albright, who will be accepting the award on the organization's behalf.
Thank you. If y'all could help me out, please, just so I can make sure I'm in the right place. When I say Black voters, you say matter. Black voters. Matter. Black voters. Matter. All right, I must be in the right place. So, Miriam talked earlier when she received her award about not wanting to stand before you all in dinner. And, I've often wondered, if it was more difficult being the speaker before dinner or the speaker after dinner. So I guess I'll find out in a few minutes. Thank you all so much for this award. I'm honored to accept it on behalf of our organization. Latasha Brown was going to be here tonight, but she had a family emergency that she's had to deal with, so she's not going to be able to make it. I also want to acknowledge my wife, April England Albright, who is really the third co-founder of Black Voters Matter. I always tell people at the time that we started the organization, she was working a good federal job. And so, she couldn't publicly be the third co-founder, but in reality, she's really been, I think, out of the three of us, she's clearly the smartest. And so, and she's the attorney and the best civil rights attorney that I've ever met. And so I just want to recognize April. Thank you, Adrian, for the introduction. And, and he did a really good job of talking about the various pieces of the work that we do at Black Voters Matter, because a lot of people only know us for maybe one piece. We always say at Black Voters Matter, we're not just a voting organization. We are a power-building organization. And we know that in order to build power, we've got to be talking about voting. It's an important tool, but we also know that we've got to be organizing and building capacity, as Adrian said, amongst those 600 local partner groups that we work with. We've got to be doing that all throughout the year, 365 days out of the year. We call it the 365 work. And so some people know us because of the voting, and you saw Senator Warnock on there. Some people know that we had a little bit of an election in 2020 and 2022 here in Georgia. So some people know us for that, and maybe some of y'all have seen the Battleground Georgia documentary that's been on MSNBC the past couple of weeks. But some people only know us for that. Some people only know us because of the re-granting that we do to those local partner organizations. Some people only know us because they've seen us traveling around on what we call the blackest bus in America, traveling to a whole bunch of states and a whole bunch of counties and states that a lot of people, a lot of organizations, a lot of candidates have just forgotten about, in territory that's been ceded over to those who are not progressive. And so, but that's exactly where we go. We look for those places. And so, so sometimes people, are surprised to hear about the many layers of what it is that what we do. And I'll talk a little bit before I leave here about the importance of this moment that we're in right now of mobilizing voters in this critical election cycle. But before we do that, since this is the American Constitution Society, I guess I should say something about the law, right? It's just a little something. And the reality is, there's always been this important relationship, this marriage between, progressive movement, civil rights movement, and the legal community, right? As my wife says, civil rights law is forged in the streets. And so when we look at, if y'all don't mind, if I can, I've in my past, I've taught a little bit at some colleges and universities. So can I go into professor mode just for a minute? A lot of times when I teach my students and we talk about movements, and we talk about the Montgomery bus boycott, and I say, what is it that ended the bus segregation in Montgomery, Alabama? And they'll say it was the boycott. But a lot of us don't know that it wasn't actually the boycott. It was a Supreme Court case, Browder versus Gale, right? Now, could that Supreme Court case have been as powerful and as successful as it was without a more than year-long bus boycott? Probably not. But could the bus boycott by itself, without that legal support, without those cases, without the legal geniuses that argued it, could it have done it by itself? Probably not. It took that marriage to be successful. That's always been the case. We could go back even further. We could go back to the Scottsboro Boys, a case that produced not just one, but two legendary Supreme Court cases. But would that case have been possible without the organizing that was taking place in the streets in support of the Scottsboro Boys, organizing by labor movements and NAACP and other grassroots movement? Can it have produced those results if it was just the law or if it was just the streets? It took that marriage in order to make that history. It's always been the case. And no less than where we are now in this current battle for civil rights. A battle which, by the way, throughout the course of 2021, I was actually arrested 5 times, mobilizing, working with other organizations, League of Women Voters, People for the American Way, many other Urban League, many other organizations that were in the streets who recognized that in the moment we were in then, as now, that we had to take it to the next level. Like, the phone calls were good, the petitions were good and all that, but at some point we had to answer the call that Dr. King gave us in the letter from Birmingham jail, where he said at some point you've got to have nonviolent civil disobedience, that you've got to be willing to create a type of tension, a constructive tension, right, in order to bring your opposition to the negotiation table. We could not have gotten the historic vote that we got, unsuccessful but still historic, on the filibuster in early 2022. We could not have even gotten to that vote if not for the fact that people had been in the streets protesting at the White House, at the Senate, all throughout the summer and fall of 2021. And so in this moment that we're in, it is another critical moment where it's going to take, civil rights is going to have to be forged in the streets. Civil rights is going to have to be forged off of movement and organizing combined with our friends in the legal community. And so what I ask of you all is to think about, what is your role in this moment? Because to be clear, we all have a role to play in this movement, right? It's not just about who it is that can stand at the podium and give a speech. There's room and a need for those who can talk. But there's also room for those who I can see on the tables. We got these yellow cards, people who need to be poll watchers, people who need to cook the meals at the community meetings, people who every now and then need to sing a little song just to give folks a little bit of hope, people who need to do the artwork and the signage. There is room for everybody in this movement. Everybody has a role to play in this. Everybody in this room is an organizer. Everybody in this room has the chance to be a history maker. And so what I ask of you is to think about, what is your role in this moment? It might be a legal role. It might be a financial role, but it might be some other role. It might be a role that we have not even dreamed of yet. And so as I leave, I'm going to offer a little bit of a story. And it goes back to Birmingham. It goes back to the children's movement. I usually share this when I'm talking to young folks. But y'all are young, right? So I'm going to share it here. And, you know, at the time of the Children's March, right, y'all know the images, the videos of the children marching in Kelly Ingram Park and the fire hoses and the dogs. Well, as that was being planned, there was a young man named James Orange, was a high school student, senior at the time, and he was at church. He went to one of those church meetings that, we often see in Eyes on the Prize and everything. But the reason he went there wasn't because he was necessarily, deeply dedicated to the movement. In fact, he went there because there were some young women going there that he was kind of interested in. And at the meeting, when it became time for them to call for volunteers of which of the young people would agree to participate in the movement, he stood up. But again, he stood up not out of any deep inspiration. He stood up because the young lady that he was with, she stood up. So he said, well, I'm going to stand up. And so young high school student James Orange gets involved, and he gets arrested at Kelly Ingram Park. But something happened after that. He gets involved in the movement. He gets involved with SCLC. He actually follows SCLC as they take the movement beyond Birmingham, Alabama, and they take it to the Black Belt of Alabama. And it's actually James Orange who's in jail in Perry County, Alabama, in 1965, which leads the community in Perry County to do something that they didn't often do because they were worried that his life was in danger. They had heard some rumors that they were going to try to take him out of jail and take him someplace, and he might not make it through the night. So it leads the activists and the community members in Perry County, Alabama, which is about 45 minutes outside of Selma, to do something that they don't usually do. They held a night march, which was dangerous. So they hold the night march, and the authorities get wind of it, and they call in all these state troopers, and they call in fake people to act like they're state troopers who weren't even state troopers. But in the midst of all this, a young man named Jimmy Lee Jackson gets murdered, protecting his grandmother and grandfather. And it's after his murder that the community in Perry County says, you know what, we are going to take his body, we're going to march from Perry County all the way to Montgomery, Alabama, and deliver his body, deliver his casket. But then some people said, that's a really long march. That's like a 90-mile march. That's too far. Let's shorten the march. Instead of going from Perry County to Montgomery, let's go from Selma. And so they planned the Selma to Montgomery march, and I think the rest of you know the rest is history, what happens in Selma, Alabama on Bloody Sunday at the first attempt at the Selma to Montgomery March. And of course, we have Bloody Sunday, which ultimately leads to the ultimate Selma to Montgomery March, which in turn leads to the passage of the Voting Rights Act. The same Voting Rights Act that we are still trying to strengthen to this day. You heard Senator Warnock talking about it. So, why do I share this story? Because arguably, a chain of events started when a young high school student, James Orange, decided that he would get involved. For whatever reason it was that he decided that he would get involved, he decided to get involved. He decided he was going to do something. And that action of him doing something set a chain of events that literally led from Birmingham to Perry County to Selma to Washington, D.C., all around the world, because everybody knows about Bloody Sunday and the Voting Rights Act in the United States of America. Because of one person, one young man's decision to do something. And so I ask you, what is it that you're going to do? What is the history that can be made from your decision right here, right now, to do something, to take a step, to stand up the way that James Orange stood up? What history could be made just from your one decision? Everybody in this room is an organizer. Everybody in this room is a history maker. And everybody in this room is a progressive champion. Thank y'all.